You're live on YouTube and ready when you are, Paul.
All right, we're gonna come to order and take roll.
When I call your name, please let me know you are here. Amanda Archer? Anyone with Mendocino County Youth Project? Ashley Hathaway?
Yes.
Katie North?
Here.
Faith Dayton?
Present.
Jeanette Ornelas?
It's
Hannah? Hannah, hi, sorry, I've been in my head. Hannah Nat. Okay. Joanne Brewer?
Here.
Oh, okay. Joanna Olson? Joseph Ditto, or anyone with my cabin? Judy Albert?
Here.
Camille Leggett? Reese Martinez? Or anyone with Northern Circle Indian Housing Authority? Teresa DeSimone? Here. Paul Davis?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we're gonna move on to public comment. Do you have any comments on non-agendized items?
We do have a visitor from the public, so I don't know when, if they probably aren't aware of when is a good time to introduce themselves. You know how I like to involve everyone, so. I don't know. Sorry, Marge. That you on the spot.
Yeah.
Marge, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Marge Hoffner. I live in Brook Trails and I'm just interested in what the county does for people that have housing issues. And I'd like to see if there's something I could do to help.
Good to meet you.
Welcome.
Thank you for being here.
Welcome.
Any other public comment? Now we're gonna move on to approval of minutes from the August 18th meeting.
Just for our minute taker and for the public, Amanda Archer just. So I'm gonna mark you with here. You're welcome.
I moved to approve the August 18th minutes.
I can second. Good job.
Is there any corrections or discussion? All right, Veronica.
I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain to approving the minutes as presented. Amanda Archer. Yes. Ashley Hathaway.
Yes.
Brady North.
Yes.
Faith Dayton.
Yes.
Hannah Nanas.
Yes.
Joanne Brewer.
Yes.
Judy Albert.
Yes.
Teresa DeSimone.
I'm gonna abstain.
Motion passed.
One to announcements. Are there any announcements?
Just that November 6th, we're gonna be having another King Slate Clinic. This is in collaboration with the Mendocino Community College. I'll send an email out to Veronica, who did a great job. You all got the word out really well last time in March, like it was wonderful, covered a lot, but so I'll send it out to Veronica, flyer and stuff. Oh, you're fine.
Any other announcements? All right, we're gonna move on to reports and presentations, starting with updates from local jurisdictions. Starting from that. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to actually pull back a little bit, go back a little bit to what we briefly discussed at our last meeting. I think it was near the end of the meeting and I suggested that perhaps the board would be interested in a presentation or greater information about what some of the federal changes might look like around Medi-Cal and HealthFresh. There's actually fairly significant impacts that could be happening around housing too, which is not actually, Teresa would be better suited to explain, or somebody, the federal housing impacts. So I think and then we also talked about another presentation or information from behavioral health on their housing projects. So we talked about a lot of different lengths. And I wanted to get some direction from the board on what specifically you'd like to see, probably in the October meeting, if it works with the schedule. So I wanted to open it up and get some clarity from this body on what would be helpful. There are other venues doing presentations around the impact of health, so I didn't know if this was the right place for that. So I'd like some feedback from all of you on what would be helpful in this particular venue.
Is this one specific to housing?
Well, what we ended up talking about last time were some of the specific changes that might happen with Medi-Cal, which kind of can impact housing, because if you lose Medi-Cal eligibility, you would no longer have eligibility to some of the community supports, which are housing specific. So it's sort of and a lot of things you would lose access to through Medi-Cal. So the Medi-Cal changes could impact people's housing situation or their access to resources. Probably more so than the CalFresh specific changes. I don't think those would impact housing as much, but most, if not all, of our clients are benefit from CalFresh. And then there's changes in the federal level, mostly around vouchers. Again, I can't speak very clearly to that, but that are also impacting our population. May impact our population. So, but this is a housing focused venue. So I'm not sure if it's the right place for a medical.
It's a housing focused venue, but it seems like it all wraps in.
It does all wrap, yeah.
With housing, struggle with everything else, and I think there's a lot of lack of clarity in terms of cuts, when they're gonna happen, whatever, and what the real impact is. And it would be really nice if we could be more helpful to our clients who are in a jumble about this.
I think right now, sorry,
No, go ahead.
no, you're not gonna, I think as far as like our funding goes, we're not necessarily going to know anything until the budget is passed. They're supposed to pass it on September 30th. And then we'll know potentially what could happen in 2026. So we're just waiting.
Like right this moment, summer 30 is not very far away.
Yeah, but what happened last year is they didn't pass.
Yes,
Right,
right.
and
It
it
is
was
really into January.
into bringing resolution.
Right.
So
Okay.
The sense that I've been going to like every presentation that there is on this stuff, I feel like as many as possible, and every single one of them has been helpful while also saying,
We don't know for
we
sure.
don't know for sure exactly how or when it's gonna, or
Right.
who it's gonna hit.
Right.
And so I'd like just to recommend Mendocino County Behavioral Health and Public Health and Social Services did a presentation to the board last Wednesday, the Health Summit, and it is recorded and available for anybody to watch. It's a 3 hours, gosh, 2.5 hours, which is a lot of information, but it is incredibly valuable information while still sticking to this. We're still not sure exactly how this is going to land or when exactly these things are going to land or how the state is going to backfill some of the things.
Right.
So I almost feel like rather than having the same kind of presentation that has the same information that is really accessible from here, that we
That's
just
kind of what I was wondering. Yeah.
pause for a minute and
Mhm.
let us get some more information from the state about what's going to be happening rather than, that's just my.
No, I think that,
While saying, I mean, yes, if you get more information about what's happening with the vouchers, can we please have a presentation as quickly as possible? And can we still get a presentation from BHRS about what bridge housing is and how we access it and what is the connection between the COC and bridge housing, because I've heard about it, but I got some kind of clarity on it last week, but it was still really like, how is this coordinated? So.
I think that's really helpful because I've been kind of struggling with a timeline and when do we share, not that we're hoarding information, but when do we share information more intentionally with our partners when there's still so many kind of unknowns. So I'm not intentionally putting my head in the sand, but there might be some benefit to being in the sand a little, like, you know, I don't know when to get out of sand. But it might still be a little bit too soon. It's possible. And you're right, Sage, there's a lot of presentations being made, lots of opportunities to learn about what's in the bill. So there's lots of information about what's in this federal bill that was passed. What it's actually going to look like and the timeline for what it's going to look like is still in flux.
Like seriously, put the health summit on in the background while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And just listen
So,
to it for 2.5
Along
hours.
those lines, I agree with you also that I think there is more definitive information around the behavioral health funding, because that's actually funding that came through before even this new federal administration. So we could prioritize requesting the behavioral health department come back and give us an update rather than the kind of federal changes on the other side. If just timing wise, that makes more sense. Is that okay? Veronica and I did meet with Karen not long ago, but it still feel like it would be important to have behavioral health invite them to this meeting specifically to answer those exact questions you just said, Sage, like how are we partnering together? What are the resources that they have available and how can we coordinate and understand them better? So Veronica, maybe we can ask them to come come to the October meeting.
The October meeting is a full membership meeting, so it'll be more than the board here, which might actually be better.
Okay, so we'll invite them to either October or November. I will keep a kind of presentation on federal changes that will impact us locally, like maybe it'll be more like January. But it's still on my radar. Okay.
I just want to say to answer your. When and when that does come about, the group should hear about. Most providers in here stop shop for. You know. I'm not gonna be telling my staff to. You know, tell their clients. I'm not up to date on. The skill ask so and so.
So you're saying when the time comes. Are you saying that knowing about the medical impacts would be really irrelevant and helpful? Okay.
What the state is doing. You know. Tier, CalFresh.
Right. There's kind of like a pool of information specific to immigrants, not immigrants at all levels of the immigration status. And then there's like a pool of information that's pretty focused on able-bodied adults without dependents, but there's a lot of nuance to that. Those are kind of like the two buckets within the Medi-Cal social services world, but they're pretty impactful in what it means for our clients. And I do think the timing is important because I do think there's some things our clients can do now that will be helpful if worst case scenario happens.
So if they're not on Medi-Cal right now, they need to get on Medi-Cal right now.
Right, don't let your Medi-Cal lapse.
The renewal is going from annual to 6 months, but if they are on January 1st, even if it's 6 months from then, when they don't qualify, they get kicked off, they'll at least have 6 months of Medi-Cal. If they sign up before.
So I think those are good points. There's
There's
some strategic things that would be good to know right now. That would be just good practice, even if the worst case scenario doesn't happen, but you know, staying enrolled in Medi-Cal is never a bad thing. So like it's there, that would.
Whereas if they, after January, go to sign up for Medi-Cal and they don't meet that work requirement stuff and other things, then they won't get it. So they could, so that's one of the things that I've heard that's been helpful is get people to sign up for it now. That
Say, do people get notified that they've been dropped off Medi-Cal, or do they get forewarning that you need to reapply again?
They get notified by mail, which is not super helpful to a lot of our clients. And sometimes if their phone is up to date, they may get a text notification that they may not pay attention to. If their phone number is up to date.
Just really quick, we have part of our special projects team, the outreach and navigation team. that does the help for CalFresh and EFIS services like CalFresh. Lily Caravello leads that unit, and she does regular newsletters and monthly partner meetings. And I'm forwarding on to our list, our large list of 120 plus people, those communications. So you can sign up for them yourself. You can rely on me to send them. There's also at the bottom of that, the EFIS _, I believe, outreach at mendocinocounty.gov. You can always reach out there if you have any questions, if you've got a client that you're struggling with. I mean, you're always welcome to call us, but if you see those emails, that's how to stay in the know.
Yeah, and I agree with Veronica. Lily's advocate partners meeting, outreach partners meeting.
Okay.
They're worth, even if you don't go to the meetings, she has pretty good notes too. So you could not go to the meetings and still get on her distribution list. It's worthwhile.
And she's my go-to with any Medi-Cal question, especially when it comes to people with a unsatisfactory immigration status or any immigration status.
Okay, and one quick update, Live Oak Apartments, Project Home Key is going to be having an open house. Pretty sure October 15th. We literally decided about an hour ago. So there'll be a flyer at some point, and the goal is for people who make a lot of referrals. We'd love for you to just come and see it too. Like anyone who's even remotely interested in Live Oak Apartments, if you want a little tour, we'll leave one of our rooms empty so you can actually see one of the apartments and just a quick stop. And we're going to do this for our partners and public officials and neighbors.
You should take like a video scope of the apartment as well.
We have not, but that's a really good idea.
Just so when everything is ready to go as far as having more community engagement, that video can be added into there as well.
It's a really good idea. We've not done that, and that would be easy when my full empty and set up. So thank you. That's a good idea. That's all the updates I have.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. If not, we'll move on to City of Ukiah.
Shannon is out. I think she's on vacation for a couple weeks, so she's not here today.
City of Fort Bragg.
I don't have any updates other than we're starting to look at the extreme weather shelter program and getting prepared for that. There's gonna be some changes to criteria. We don't have that finalized yet, but when we do, I'll bring it forward.
Hey, Hannah, would you guys make sure to send that to me and Megan before you release it? So we can talk about the contract.
Just really quick. Is Motel 6 reopened, or are you still at the other one?
We served Motel 6, they have limited availability from what I understand. I don't think that they're completely reopened. I can check if
So is your
preferred it's Motel 6.
no? I don't care. I just was curious. Are you gonna? Were you?
We're not there yet.
Oh, well, you don't know where you're gonna be at. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other jurisdiction dates? If not, we're gonna move on to standing committee reports, starting with strategic planning.
We have a meeting scheduled next, whatever the 22nd is. Monday. So we'll be kind of reconvening after having gathered all that stakeholder input, which is actually in your packet today as well. And yeah, kickstarting our strategic planning process. Sure.
A technical thing, anyone who comes to that meeting, our lobby is closed until 1 o'clock. And so if you come early, you're not gonna have access to the building. So come at 1 o'clock. Stand outside or stand outside and knock on the door and maybe I'll hear you. But it'll open at 1.
Solutions. Veronica?
We met last week and our next meeting is November 12th at 1 p.m. Might move these meetings in the future to 1:30 just so we don't have this lobby issue continuing. Because poor Amanda came a little early for the Shelter and Solution
What instead of
Committee. And she was early and
It was fine.
to let her in and it was this whole thing.
So,
We had a really great meeting. I've had a lot since Wednesday and my brain's not pulling it up. We talked about solutions in Willits. We talked about the purpose of the committee and kind of refocusing that. Joanne, can you help me a little bit? Do you remember anything else? You don't? There was big stuff.
That nobody remembers.
Why would you take note?
Yeah, I saw the agenda in front of me. I feel like, oh, we're
we revisited the safe parking a little bit with all the barriers to that. Shared some new legislation or recap some of that. Talked about, well, it's a lot, like the different financial barriers and just getting off the ground as nonprofit and creative ways that that might be possible.
There was one other topic.
HAP 6.
What?
Did we talk a little bit about HAP 6?
Oh, we did. We talked about the HAP 6 application that was submitted. We're actually, it's on the agenda to talk about more in more detail today. I talked about some of that HAP 6 was structured differently than the previous rounds. I had to submit a portfolio of all of our interim housing that included any congregate shelter or program that did not require the client to sign an occupancy agreement or a lease. So like, here's our confidentiality agreement, like you understand, don't disclose other people, like that's just a policy. That's not an occupancy agreement. And so really it only included our congregate shelter beds, but it included all of them, whether they're eligible for HAP funding or not. So even though Project Sanctuary's non-congregate shelter, their motel voucher program is funded by HAP, I could not include it. But even though their safe house, their emergency shelter is not HAP funded, I did have to include it. So the logic was a little different than what we've seen before. We had to map out a 5-year budget for each program. And if they did not, we had to demonstrate that there was enough funding in the community to support every shelter program at the current bed capacity through June 30th, 2029. That's the full grant period. We did not have enough. We had a $1.8 million deficit, which was actually less than I thought it was going to be. Or no, it was 3.8 million. It was per year, somewhere around there. So it was almost a $4 million deficit, and that included use of some of the HAP 6 funding. And so what that did or predicated for the application was we can't use the funding for any other reason. It only can support congregate shelter beds. Wow. And it can only support congregate shelter beds that operate a housing first month. And so we're not going to be able to fund anything besides like building bridges, hospitality house, things like that. That means that we may need to strategically look at how HAP 5 is being used and maybe juggle some of that budget. Maybe we still have like 250,000 that's unallocated right now that could be used. HAP 7 has already been included in the budget. So I know that there's going to be an additional round of funding, but really we're limited on what we can use HAP 6 for.
That's a good question about the HAP 5. What is the performance period that's left for that?
That goes until June 30th, 2028.
Okay. Thank you.
We talked about that. That was the big thing.
And so that 250,000 is still unallocated, is that because that one group?
Yeah, the COC and the county agreed, let's leave some room. We don't know what HAP 6 is gonna look like. We've continued funding for all of the existing projects to where they would have at least through
March.
June 30th, 2026 for our shelters. I think it might be December 31st, 26 for some of our other projects, the rapid rehousing and such. Project Sanctuary is a little different because you didn't spend quite as quickly.
Right.
And so it's just the spending timeline is a little pushed out for you guys.
Mhm.
I think the goal is not to cut anyone off.
No.
At least through June 2026, but it's getting very strategic how we have to allocate the rounds and think about the future.
And the state legislature hasn't done anything on HAP 7 other than include language in the budget that, yes, it's gonna be there. So we know. So that's Shelter and Solutions. Any other questions on that?
All right. On to coordinated entry and discharge plan.
That work is ongoing and going really well. Myself, Joanne Brewer, and Tabitha Connell with Mendocino Coast Hospitality Center are participating in a HUD workshop series on coordinated entry fundamentals. And we're using that to help the two of them better understand coordinated entry concepts as they're the leaders within that community and within that committee. I know Shanna is the chair of the committee. But she's so busy, it was just too much. So Joanne stepped up. But so that they have a better understanding of what the system needs and expectations are. So that as we build out things like the matching and referral process, actually giving that legs and getting it going and moving forward. So we're doing that with them. Our coordinated entry list management provider, Nutmeg Consulting. Paul Schmitz is helping us make more improvements to by name list. We caught on to some inconsistencies within the scoring because it's done by hand by our case managers. And we didn't have a way in HMIS to have it auto calculate. There's some real major limitations there. Paul built in formulas that would pull from the data and create the actual score automatically. And we've added that to the by name list so that we can compare what was entered in by the case manager versus what the auto calculate was. Just so that we can kind of see what's going on within the system. I think we're going to be removing the calculations in HMIS and not asking the case managers to hand calculate anything, and instead just answering yes or no questions that then are calculated on the by name list to give us the score. Create some of its own changes that need to happen within the process. And so we're kind of looking at that and how to move forward. We tried to we can do the literal homelessness status, because we ask, are they literally homeless and are they chronically homeless? And for those of you who aren't as adept at this, literally homeless means they're experiencing street level homelessness, they're in a shelter, place not meant for human habitation, transitional housing meant for people experiencing homelessness, things like that, the category 1. And where Paul has figured out how to use the current living situation, it's recorded in HMIS to determine if that person is experiencing literal homelessness. There are some caveats that we're having to fix. Like if they're being released from an institution, there's some follow-up questions that we need to make sure that we're capturing. So we haven't rolled that out yet, but it's pending and we're working on it. Chronic homelessness is a bit more complicated, and I don't think we're actually going to be able to use it right now because there's some inconsistencies in how it's applied or utilized between not only agencies, but sometimes between assessors. And so we need to get some more agreement and better use on that piece of it. So we're trying basically to automate it, so we're not relying on the case managers to report everything and make it a little bit easier for them, a lot easier. Yeah, that's where we're at, coordinating it.
Questions, comments? If not, we'll move on to community accountability.
And so that is, just want to let you guys know that I haven't heard back yet on a personal level from the vice chair. So we're just going to move forward, schedule our meeting in the next week, week and a half. I have a big grant that's due on September 26th because I still volunteer write grants on the side. And I want to do it because it's going to be very helpful for the community. So I'm focusing my efforts on that right at the moment. But after that, I will be pretty much free and able to schedule that meeting out. I know there's a lot of people who are interested in there. I've also been speaking to a lot of the communities and communities of color who are interested in also attending and being a part of it, especially since they have a different scope, and a part of the community accountability committee is to ensure that all voices are included. And I want to make sure that we're not just limiting it to just who's coming to the table, but who's also missing. So I'm excited to have them join as well. Very excited, in fact. And yeah, that's it for that.
Great. Questions, comments?
Can I add something that is different than the CIC? So there is a young coalition group in Ukiah that are currently working on developing a program that is mentoring and tackling some of the issues with our youth being early involved in substance use and how that's leading to juvenile system and homelessness and all of the above. And they're trying to focus on ways to do an apprenticeship program, which would then work with hopefully some of your communities, and the grant would pay the youth to work and gain the skills that they need in order to build up their resume skills and have something that they can work towards, and also have mentorship throughout that process as well. So
Just send me some information on that.
they need people or organizations, godly, who are willing to take on the free work. Which most people are like, hey, we have filing, we have this, we need this. So if you guys have any, I mean, from Mendocino County, I know they might be interested in possibly having some youth do some work with the COC. And even with some of your organizations, I don't mind sending that to you guys once I get the okay to do so, but I think it would be very helpful for the community.
Are you able to share the name of the coalition? Or are you a little nervous about that?
I'm a little nervous because I didn't ask, and
Okay.
it's not my group. And again, I'm just assisting and then leaving like Mary Poppins, but they're doing all the heavy lifting.
I would love some information too.
When you get that, okay.
Are they in Ukiah?
Yes, okay. It's actually a young youth coalition. They're like 21 and 23 years old. and they had decided to do it on their own. And they saw this grant and they're like, hey, can you help us understand it? So I'm just reading it to them and showing them and giving them some assistance, but they're doing all the heavy lifting. And they've been doing a great job so far.
I just want to share that the project contracts with Juvenile Hall already, so we have access to kids coming out of detainment, and we have a clothing closet that is completely youth-led. That would be a really great opportunity to have some work experience. We've worked with CalWorks in the past, so we have some pieces that might fit really naturally. So when you get more information, I really would like to kind of see how we might be able to take what we already have and partner.
Yeah, I think they would love to do that. One of their biggest issues is the policy component. They want to fit in how they can provide assistance to the community and how it will directly prevent them from being connected to the prison pipeline, and how it will prevent them from experiencing homelessness as well, because it's a snowball effect. One of them is policy. They want to make an initiative policy change. So I've been trying to wrap my head around that, and it's supposed to focus, it kind of ties in with CAC. That's why I brought this up, because it focuses on how we can assist and prevent some of the stigmas that can oftentimes lead to oppression and systematic barriers for people of color and people who are disadvantaged. That's about it.
Membership committee?
Meets quarterly, hasn't met since July. We met in the June, early July. And racking my brain, I don't think we've got any new members since the last announcement. Yeah, I don't really have much of an update for that one, and it's meeting jointly with the Community Accountability Committee. So.
HMIS and performance measurement?
Sorry. Do you want to start?
The most recent data completeness report is attached to your agenda. There was nothing really strange about it. Of course, we're always going to have those street outreach projects that are probably going to come up with an X because they just aren't collecting the same information as everybody else. And we are hoping that our data completeness reports are going to get an update from our night consultant helpers very soon. So you may start to see them look a little different or have a different way to access them. So just kind of a heads up on that. We've been talking about it for a while. That's it.
Wanted to give an update on our Nutmeg consulting project. I was thinking of the stuff that I gave previously under the coordinated entry committee with the update on the by name list. I also wanted to share that later today, our HMIS end users will be receiving an email from me with instructions on how to access the ticketing portal. We have an alternate way to access. There's also a Microsoft Office 365 access. So if any agencies have difficulty doing it the main way, we do have a workaround. That's what we had to do for Amy and I didn't want to release access to a system we couldn't see. So we got access today and we'll be sending that out before the end of the day today. And I'm really super excited about it. The next step will be the learning management system. I really wanted to get this ticketing system up and running before we took that next step, kind of like a test with the vendor. I didn't want to get too invested if things kind of blew up. So I'll be doing that next. And that'll be a learning platform for our coordinated entry system, for our homeless management information system or HMIS, as well as some best practices and, what is rapid rehousing, trainings like that. And we're keeping it on the agenda. I do not have an update at this time, but we're working on updates to the HMIS policies and procedure manual. And we'll be bringing that back to you guys for approval once we get input from county council on some of those changes. Megan, you want to add anything or is that good?
No, I do need to circle back to the county council, like, I think our needs are not a super high priority in their big picture, but, and I think that honestly, we've got a lot of priorities too, so, but I'm gonna continue to pursue that, getting some clarity from county council on HMIS access, particularly for law enforcement, but there were some other pieces that were kind of related to that as well.
On to committee report.
I'm working on scheduling the first 2026 Plain Times Count ad hoc committee. I think I've got a date identified, but there's a couple key people who aren't available and I need to talk to them. This is one of them. I agree. You can come to the table if you want. You don't have to sit back.
That brings everything.
But yeah, that's where we're getting started early this year.
Okay.
It's just water. I'm not entitled to nothing.
So you're gonna sit in the front of the TV?
Yeah.
It is recorded.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helped. Not a lot.
We're moving on to projects.
Yeah.
We have a reentry collaborative update.
I was looking for the notes. I apologize. It was the same. And I couldn't find my email, but it was the same person, works for the college. Doing reentry with the youth there, just
Jimmy.
kind of talking about how.
Jimmy,
Jimmy, thank you.
I'm
Yes,
working with them on the Kingsley Clinic in November.
yes, yes, that is what. Do you want to speak to?
No, I wasn't there.
Okay. Well, he was just trying to explain how to get kids involved. I was asking specifically how to get kids involved because he works within the college and sometimes financial status is a barrier. And so he was just emphasizing, start with FAFSA and stuff like that, but he has many support. Do you work directly with Jim?
He just reached out because he's part of his, I think it's called the Distorted Justice Project that he is in charge of. And so he was just reaching out to me. I've just spoken about our clean slate work. And so that's why we're collaborating. But I don't know everything that he does in his program, but it sounds like a lot. They have a little center at the college, which I think is fantastic. And they have specific types of programs for folks who have had interactions with the justice system. And so I think they have like 3 staff members. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think he's only in Ukiah, is that correct?
Yeah, we'll call it, college.
Yeah.
He could probably meet with people at other campuses. They would just need to.
Yeah.
And stuff, because the Mendocino College is in Willits.
And I think they have one in Colorado too. They have one.
We have a
satellite
satellite
told me
center.
that,
So
yeah.
it's over there.
Yeah, he told me that, I think, right. And Lake County too, I think he mentioned, yeah. Jimmy Bay Long, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Not, are there any other project updates? There are no board protocols and governance issues on this agenda, so we'll move on to funding.
We've got updates under HAP as well as the COC programs today. Starting with HAP, the HAP Round 6 application was successfully submitted on August 29th. Since I'm on that, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to B and skip A. Part of that application is an MOU between the county and the COC agreeing to one specific component of the HAP 6 application, the Regionally Coordinated Homelessness Action Plan. That same type of plan was in the HAP 5 application. So this was an opportunity for us to update that plan. The MOU, because we didn't have the MOU done until the application was submitted. So HCD allows updates to the application once it's been submitted. So we'll have a period of time to submit a signed and approved MOU. So if we want to make any changes to the application, we can. And so the county will be looking at its aspects. So I know that there's going to be changes to the MOU that's being presented to you today. I just don't know what those are going to look like yet. We're going to be working primarily with behavioral health and planning and building services to make sure we're all on board with the language that's included. We also, part of that application was the stakeholder engagement session report, the things that we gathered. So both the MOU and the Regional Coordinated Homelessness Action Plan and the stakeholder engagement session report is included in your. I know it hasn't been out very long. It was released to attendees on Friday. So I really wanted to make sure that you guys all had a copy. It was presented to the board so that you could review it and come back with questions next month, unless anybody has anything I want to talk about right now.
I remember for the strategic plan that you came to Hospitality Center and did a presentation, I'm gonna say 3 years ago. Is there any changes since then?
On the strategic plan,
Mm-hmm.
so the strategic planning committee is working on revising that plan. It was passed in 2020. We had revisions in 2022. Those are all on the COC website. And they're working on a 2025-26 update. And so those stakeholder engagement group meetings that we had is a component of gathering that feedback for those improvements, but not all of it. So we're going to be talking about more and how to engage more folks to get feedback at the meeting on the 26th.
So I think the document you were looking at there is no, it's the strategic plan as of 2022. Maybe it's titled a little bit weird.
It is.
Yeah, we have not updated strategic plan yet. That's
Okay.
what the input was, and the input was the beginning of that process. There's a committee that will be updating that strategic plan.
There was some stakeholder feedback to improve that strategic plan.
So I am interested if people have thoughts about the stakeholder engagement feedback, just initial thoughts about it, if they even caught their.
Looking through it, I mean, I think it is interesting in terms of the bullet points that
Yeah. It's interesting to me, like kind of sad, I guess. When it looks like the things that I felt that were probably working well. Stakeholders or the people receiving service acted like they had a little question mark down.
Like what specific things?
Including the wasn't there and then also the purple outreach team, that maybe they're afraid of the homeless. I mean, somebody must have said it, you know, and just because one person says something, then stakeholders doesn't mean that that's what has to be focused on. But it is just sort of interesting in terms of how you even address that.
Yeah, I found that one interesting too. So I think, it's really hard to do this work well in many ways because, I don't, people that are, things are going well, there's not a lot of commentary on it. So you don't always hear the things that are going well because people want to speak up about things that are not going well.
Right.
Even when you're specifically trying to solicit what's going well, it people move to that areas of improvement really fast. So
reflect on that a little bit, Judy. I think around the, because I felt a similar, like, oh my gosh, I thought this is something that we've majorly improved, but the experience and what's being reported in these lived experience sessions seems to be still have work to do. And specifically around like the housing stabilization services. There's some things in here around like that seems like services are focused on getting into housing, but then not on supporting the A house and all of these things. And I'm like, oh my God, we've done so much work there. And there's resources and there's a funding stream and there's providers and even though it's not to take any of this and go like, oh, we're not doing it well or not, or we're doing a bad job. It's not like productive, but to say, what can we improve? How can we, make that, maybe it's not accessible to the people that made those statements, right? Maybe it's the people who have had bad experiences are the ones that are more likely to speak up. But what can we learn from it?
you're never going to have 100% success. So if we're hearing from the 20% that it didn't work out from, it's hard to know if that, I mean, just specific to the outreach, but I get case notes every single time our outreach team is out, the people look for, and like I have a detailed case note of interactions they had with that person. And, so I see all of this evidence of like detailed engagement. And so how you kind of balance that is difficult. Something that these stakeholder feedback folks, and I should have looked at this again, so you can tell me, oh yeah, it's right in there if I said it super recently, but they told me they saw this very stark difference between the Fort Bragg experience and the UCI experience. I was like, oh, tell me more. And they were like, well, it'll be in the report or something. And then no, neither am I. So I kind of want to go back to them. I didn't know, maybe they didn't want to put it in writing, but I was very interested in what they meant by that.
It's more in the narrative and the recommendations on how to make improvements. People in Fort Bragg expressed that a hospitality center was a safe place for them to be. That they knew they could talk to somebody and they would get help with whatever they were dealing with. They said that people care and it's like a family. And it was this really tight-knit expression of community and support. And there really wasn't spoken to by the people that were engaged in Ukiah. They just didn't say those things. They expressed gratitude for a place to be, and they talked about the case managers, building relationships with them and stuff. But it was a different experience. Fort Bragg's a lot smaller.
And that's what I was interested in, is the experience different because it's a smaller community and there is just a deeper connection between everybody there. Where in Ukiah, you're still going to have probably more people coming that are not as invested in here. People may be coming from the coast or Willits to Ukiah because they had to spend some time in jail. There may not be as connected in Ukiah, both because it's bigger and because they maybe were here, not because they wanted to be, right? So I couldn't, I was interested in that, if it's just a function of the different, just cultures of the two regions, or if there was something to be learned from either side.
Isn't there a real change in difference in the design of the facilities
Yes.
too?
100%.
I mean, just that, I would think that in itself.
And
would
that-
be the biggest difference right there.
I know maybe Paul doesn't think it's an asset, but the hospitality house, because it comes with liabilities, is an incredible space. Like, there's something
Beautiful.
amazing about it. And you guys just don't have an amazing facility. It's not an.
Sure, I think it's amazing.
But it's not an 1800s hotel. It's
Right.
a very different feel.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I wondered too, like, you feel like you're in a fancy hotel.
Exactly.
You kind of are.
I love the, I mean, I'm just speaking to the models that we have created in the two spaces, like, they have behavioral health services really integrated
literally right
into their whole structure, right? Whereas Building Bridges, it has behavioral health services, but not on site at that
not a
location,
clinic,
so
yeah.
it's not a clinic, it's not, the energy that we're trying to cultivate at Building Bridges is not like a mental health wellness clinic, it's not like the serene, quiet, like peaceful music, and those things are totally needed, and I want that space. And it's not the model that we
Right.
cultivated at B2, and we put some things in place actually kind of deliberately to say, it's a place to settle for a long, to like, this is a temporary spot that, well, we're gonna get you to the more long-term thing. And so the energy, while I think we still have a really community engaged feeling at B2, like, it's very engaged, it's just not, this is my safe place feeling for like, this is my, it's just, it's meant to be temporary.
And my sense is the stakeholders, the facilitators felt that, they spent time in Fort Bragg, which was great, because often I feel like people don't make it all the way out there, right? And so they spent time in that space and they spent time in the space, and they could feel the difference. So they didn't call that out quite as clearly, the stakeholder feedback, but I was always interested, because we're in the same county, and our ability to learn from each other should always be as strong as possible. And sometimes I'm like, are we missing opportunities to learn from each other, even here in this county,
More broadly, all the services in Fort Bragg are very, very close. So that starts to feel like you're all part of one thing.
Yeah.
Social
That's probably-
services 2 blocks away. Project Sanctuary 2 blocks
Yeah, right.
away.
Like, even physically, they're right
If you're
next to
using
each other.
tapestry services across the street, it's,
You can just walk down.
they don't need to leave like a 5-block radius for, if we're giving you a referral, well, we can walk you there. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
the clinic, those clinics is, right up the street. And that makes a big difference to folks.
The other thing, one of the stakeholder feedback, like, facilitator said to me, and she's like, I could just see so many different things that the elected officials can or should weigh in a certain way. And I don't know what she meant either. And I was like, what do you mean? But we ran out of time there. So I felt like there was some observations that they were making that didn't necessarily make it into the report. And I'm very curious about them.
Great, thanks.
Can I just ask what we're doing with this report afterwards, or we're just gonna tuck it away or talk about it, or try to create another plan?
We're going to use it as a core piece of information to develop the next strategic plan. So it's here right now. Our strategic planning committee is meeting next Monday, and we're going to kind of untangle it even closer to really figure out what takeaways within the stakeholder feedback are going to be embedded in our plan. And there's some obvious ones. I mean, I think there's some things in there that I'm not surprised, but I'm glad to see reiterated again, that connection between the behavioral health field and the housing field needs to be more integrated as much as possible. So there's some things that I think we could have expected to show up, but it was good to see that.
I kind of look at some of the stakeholder feedback as a prompt to look further into it. So
That's a good point. Like, there's
Probably
something,
be a-
questions for us.
And maybe, that's a survey. If it's something staff concentrate on, go, well, Turns out I only found one person that felt that way. But, you know, something sticking in one person's mind and not another, it doesn't mean that it didn't. But they didn't have the same experience, and maybe it wasn't quite as important enough to get triggered during that meeting, so I would hope that we take a look at some of those things.
Anything else on HAP? Oh, the MOU, can I steal that?
Of course.
The MOU is the second half of the packet, starting on page 29. It's a 3-page MOU that follows the county template. And then it's got the county signature page, a support page, and then starting on your packet, in your packet on page 33 is the actual coordinated homelessness action plan, section 3 of the application. And this is an attachment to the MOU. And so you can see there's a lot. So I know you guys haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but does anyone have any questions? Comment? Through it? Megan, will you talk a little bit about what we included under the policies for addressing encampment? Because that was really new. Just what the county's doing. Like the
What page
Ukiah,
of the packet is it on?
page 39 to 40. The county's response is on page 39. The COC's response is on 40. And so it's the protocol in place with City of Ukiah.
Right. So the only kind of formal encampment policy that is in place in Mendocino County is between the City of Ukiah and the Department of Social Services. So it's not, it's no broader than that. It's UPD and Social Services Department. It's the language in that MOU is that it's a coordination agreement, called a coordination agreement. And it's very clear about when the Ukiah Police Department decides to disband an encampment, and they're the ones who make that choice, not social services, not any service providers. When and if they make a decision to disband an encampment, how the coordination works with the social services department provides an outreach ahead of that. So it's pretty narrowly focused. When the concept of this encampment coordination protocol was shared, like, does the county also want to engage in this? Like for the areas outside of Ukiah, the sticking point is really around trash removal. And that's where the county starts to get uncomfortable. In the City of Ukiah, they just take responsibility for the trash removal. The county doesn't feel as comfortable or interested or willing to do that piece of it. So I think that's really where the challenges in developing encampment protocols have really the sticking points been about trash removal. So the City of Ukiah just does it. I think they do it with their transportation department. I don't know who does the cleanup part, but they just take responsibility of that. The county's position is they don't actually have like a trash removal like department. And then they get angry. They feel like creek bed should be the state's responsibility, the Department of Fish and Game, not them. So there's just a lot of jurisdictional fussing about on who should be responsible for trash removal. And it doesn't seem to be like the thing that the state is funding localities to do, just that piece, the trash removal part. So there doesn't seem to be a funding source for it either. So that's what's been interesting. I think the encampment, that's really been the main, whenever like it's brought up with the sheriff or the law enforcement side, you know, he's really clear, I can't be responsible for the trash removal part. And then it sort of falls apart from there because if that's really an important piece of it. I think if you're going to clean up, it's really the main reason you're addressing it because it's a health and safety issue that has to do often with trash. So that's been a little bit of a standstill, I think. And I don't actually know how or if it's going to shake loose, to be honest. outside of that narrow encampment coordination protocol that the city of Ukiah has put into place.
Is it because there aren't any funding, so I mean, I'm just going through the Rolodex in my head. Different possible funding sources, and pretty sure the county could possibly get some DOJ funding to support it, especially if individuals need to like do some cleanup to meet certain hours, whatnot, so I'm kind of confused as to why.
You know what, you're right, Canal, it's probably a combination of there isn't funding to do it and no departments want to take on that piece of it. So I have been aggressively saying, I deal with people, I do not deal with trash. So like there may be, you're right, there may be some grants out there and I'm like, I'm not doing it. I can't be responsible for trash removal. I don't have trucks. I don't know anything about that world. But so it's both a lack of, you're right. It's not only a lack of funding, it's a lack of somebody wanting to be responsible for that piece of it. Who is not, I'm not gonna let the COC become responsible for trash removal. I'm just not gonna do it. Right, so like I'm trying to hold a very strong line on that.
Trash removal is so much more than just unhoused people.
Totally, and in our community, there's a lot of household dumping
Yeah.
that's mixed in, a lot of it. Encampment or elsewhere, or they, so that when the community's concerned about trash, only a portion of that may be unhoused people related. So it's a whole thing, in a rural county. There's a lot of really isolated rural parts of our community that have huge trash problems, banning cars, all kinds of stuff. So that is not a world I've been willing to take on. But what it means is that we haven't made a ton of progress on encampment protocols because this piece is so problematic.
One of the barriers.
Yeah.
So, but aren't encampments illegal?
Yes, but I mean, I think, well, actually, I think it's very nuanced. If somebody's camping on private property and that private property owner hasn't said anything, then it's not
Then it's
necessarily
okay.
illegal. And then
Property
the property owner's not, but then there's some property owners, and then it becomes a code enforcement issue, right? So the property owner's not, they don't care, or they're absentee, but a neighbor cares. So like, it's a whole world. We don't actually want to be that involved. And so that's why I've been like, I am narrowly focused on the people part of it, but all these other areas, the jurisdiction, who's responsible for the cleanup, who's responsible for the enforcement, is not something I've wanted.
So
us to
basically,
do.
it's enforceable if somebody makes a complaint.
Yeah. Can be.
Can be, but if somebody doesn't make a complaint.
And then on top of that, the law enforcement agency has to feel like it's high enough priority for them, and they might not. A lot of times they don't.
Hmm.
So, if it's a small encampment out and then they might just be like, this is not a high priority for me, because they've got a lot of priorities. And so it's, again, I try to keep us as narrowly focused as possible on the providing outreach to individuals there if somebody else has made a decision to do something in that area. So, and we're not responsible for trash. I just can't do it.
It's gonna be interesting to see the pit count, to see how many individuals were unhoused next year. Like the county jurisdiction, and kind of like do a cross-reference with the data from this year to last year.
Veronica, I noticed something interesting, and because it was when we were looking at the pit count data this year, and there's a longer report. We shared the 2-page with you, but there was a little longer report. And again, I don't know if we should really hang our hats on this, but the percentage of people that were living in tents, unhoused people living in tents, was like 30% last year or something. Yeah. And now it's like 1%. Like whatever people were seeing there, and way more just sort of out in the world. So I think, was something we noted is if has there been more aggressive encampment work done, not by us, but by law enforcement, that has resulted in fewer people being in tents.
Were the counts done at the same time of day?
Yeah.
Last year is this.
Yeah. It was the proportion of where people were, like, because they just make 4 things: cars, abandoned buildings or something, just out in the world, or tents. They look at those things. The tent one just dropped quite a bit.
And the just out
in the world. I think it's just
No tent.
yeah,
I'm outside,
what they
but
called it,
no
right?
tent.
Just, I guess, sleeping on the ground, I guess. Yeah, without a makeshift shelter.
It says outdoors.
Outdoors. So it was interesting to note, like, maybe there are less visible tents. Possible.
And I'm still chasing down some details.
Yeah, we want to be
Might
totally
not.
sure about it because it was kind of a big shift and we just wanted to be sure that it's accurate. But even as we know with our pit count, you're looking at smaller and smaller subsets, right? It's like unhoused, then it's, so a few changes can change those percentages quite a bit. So we have to be mindful of that too.
People also get tickets for camping paraphernalia now. There's been I've seen a lot of tickets for it.
So they may not be putting up their tents for that reason.
I only saw one tent.
Right by the shelter. And it wasn't really even a tent, it was like a truck.
Makeshift. Yeah, so that was just something we noticed in the trend, but I don't know if it's gonna continue to be true, but it was something.
So do they confiscate it, Joanne?
No, but they cite them. They get a physical ticket. They brought them into the shelter. And it's for having a sleeping bag or a bedroll or.
Or even a sleeping bag?
Misdemeanor.
When did that law come into effect?
Oh, it's been a thing.
I think asked for one.
I think the law's been in effect for a long time. I think the enforcement of it is going up.
They stopped looking at it really with the grants pass stuff. And then last year we went back to ticketing for it.
Did the city of Ukiah ordinance remove you can do up to 64 square feet and stuff?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking anybody.
Remove the you can do up to 64 square feet.
Remember, you could do an 8x8, like they had in the ordinance language about you're allowed to have, from this time to this time, you can have an 8x8, which ended up being like 64 square feet. And it was
so long, I don't.
I'm wondering if they've taken action more recently since then.
I don't know that, I mean, the coordination protocol was just about coordinating services. So what UPD's rules are that they're following wasn't really delineated in the ordinance, because it was in the protocol, it was just really about how we communicate. And so like one of the pieces in the coordination protocol was that social services would notify the local shelter if an enforcement action was going to take place, just so they're aware. So it was sort of some of the communication part of it. Which I will say, Ukiah hasn't done any encampment disbandments in a very long time that they've followed this. They definitely are moving along small groups, because I think it's 5 or more people was counting as an encampment in their thing, but they haven't activated the protocol in a very long time for us.
I brought this up because I wanted it to get on your guys' radar. In the budget language for HAP 7, it has very little language describing anything, but it does say that every applicant, in order to receive HAP 7 funds, must have a formal policy to address encampments that at least partially complies with the Cal ICH guidance on addressing encampments. Yeah, so the COC is going to have a formal policy that it submits with its HAP 7 application, and the same for the county. Jurisdictions are also required to have at least applied for a pro-housing designation, which the county has not yet done.
So we're entering into an interesting time, I think, for the COC to kind of observe, because the state is using the HAP funding 6, and I probably they're going to use 7 to some extent, to force jurisdictions to do more around housing. Again, this isn't really the COC's piece of it, but they're going to say, if you don't have pro-housing, you can't get this funding. Well, more interestingly, this funding may divert to all the control of the COC. So they're saying, if you want homeless housing, if you want funding for homelessness, you've got to step up in this way. You need to have an encampment protocol. You need to be more aggressive and assertive around affordable housing. So it'll just be kind of interesting to see how that flows out. Again, the COC, we're not affordable housing developers. We can't force housing to be built. We can't do any of those things. And we don't have much role to play, honestly, in encampment decision-making. But the state is trying to fund jurisdictions, and these are mostly cities that they're frustrated with or whatever, but we're caught up in it to take more specific actions that the state wants them to take. So yeah, it is interesting sort of to watch that play out a little bit.
Veronica, you said Cal IC, what was it?
Cal ICH, the California Interagency Council on Homelessness.
The only jurisdiction in Mendocino County that has a pro-housing designation, meaning they're meeting goals of building housing is the city of Ukiah. So there's none of the cities and the county have that designation.
Anything else under HAP 6?
Oh.
Okay, the last one is the continuum of care program. Had reissued for a second time, so they reissued, and then reissued, in May they reissued, and then in September they reissued the COC builds NOFO. They released it on September 5th, and the deadline to respond was September 12th. They removed all scoring. Crazy. They removed 100% of the scoring for applications and said it was gonna be first come, first serve. The first 8 applications received by HUD are gonna be funded.
That's fascinating.
Since we didn't have a meeting until the 15th, I didn't have permission from you guys to even consider applying. However, it also required that all applicants, and that means the COC, not the program operator, but the continuum of care, would no longer engage in equity work.
Didn't it also require that the project had to do drug testing or something? It like had to be a sober facility?
It could not practice harm reduction.
Like it had to be like
At certain.
anti-housing first.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like aggressively not housing first. I think it was quite something.
The language is in the NOFO and in the announcement, so if anybody wants to see it, but it closed on Friday. It opened on a Friday and closed the following Friday.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So I just really wanted to clue you guys in.
So that didn't happen.
This is how HUD is working. I received an email from Home Base with recommendations on how COCs can prepare in advance for getting ready for a potential 2025 COC NOFO. Last year, Congress allowed COCs to submit a 2-year application, so we were supposed to skip 2025. But it looks like the new administration is gonna reissue another one. We don't know when, we don't know what it's gonna have. We've talked a little bit about it. It's gonna have some more potential project types than what we've done before. But what Home Base recommended was that COCs begin to review renewal project performance and determine if any funds need to be reallocated. So do we wanna, because the only COC funded project that we have at this time, besides the COC planning grant that goes to the county to support like 4 hours of my time a week. There's the COC permanent supportive housing tenant-based rental assistance grant that the Community Development Commission receives, our local public housing authority. I looked at the drawdowns and it looked like CDC used like what, 94%?
Yeah, we're
96?
between 90 and 95% usually.
Of the
But
utilization.
I
of the
think
grant.
we're expected to utilize more this year because our average HAP is going up and we're housing more people to maximize and use that funding. That's what our goal is
Right.
this year.
But the COC is responsible for looking at, do we want to continue renewing those projects? Do we want to carve out any space for new funding? Things like that. So I wanted to bring it to the board and see how you wanted to handle that. Do you want to do an ad hoc committee? Do you want me to bring it back next month? How do you want to handle it?
I'd likely to do the similar policy changes to HUD, to CSC that it just did to Bill.
So
National Alliance to End Homelessness, along with several other entities, has filed a lawsuit against HUD regarding the language changes in the 2024 COC grant agreements, where it required basically, you can't have an unsatisfactory immigration status in any way. The household can't, in order, if they're going to receive COC assistance. And Teresa, my brain's going too fast. What are some other things that they outlined in our contracts? I haven't even gotten ours yet.
That was probably at the beginning of the
Yeah, see, I'm sure.
There was, I did a presentation here about it, and most of it was, that everybody, well, not everybody in the household, but people couldn't receive rental assistance for our PSH program if they were not US citizens or had eligible immigration status. And so that was in the language for the new contract, and I think there was something else in regards to the housing first model not being applicable.
They weren't going to enforce it anymore.
They weren't going to enforce it, and there was something, I think, to have to do with equity and diversity, but I can't remember.
System, was that?
That's for immigrant, yeah, so we have to run everybody through the Department of Homeland Security's, it's called a SAVE system. If they say that they don't have legal, if they're not a US citizen. So people provide their birth certificates and photo IDs, which verifies US citizen status, but if they say they're not a citizen, but they're have eligible immigration status, we have to run them through the Department of Homeland Security SAVE system to verify their eligible immigration status. So that kind of has changed and come into play.
And so there's a lawsuit right now against HUD.
I imagine
because
at
of
the
a lot of those
very
changes.
least, like Fair Housing Act applies in discrimination against disability by, if they start removing housing first principles, it set us up for violating fair housing.
Right, so they're saying they're not enforcing housing first. We could still choose to enforce, but
But they're not mandating that we don't
Right,
do,
right.
which could come.
Yeah,
Okay.
it could.
I was just, but for me, that was an important piece, just because I think regardless of what are the COC funds, but doing an ad hoc to problem solve some of these things that are happening around permanent housing, rental assistance could be really helpful.
There could be more
As
things
it's-
that are changing for this specific funding.
Yeah.
But we just don't know what yet, and I'm not gonna, because it's there right now.
I think also planning for like how to be thoughtful about what we're doing with funds and as new opportunities come up from the COC funding. So an ad hoc would be good. I agree.
I think also the lawsuit involves, because the policies are, like, you're not gonna get funding if you live like in cities or counties that are like sanctuary cities that have inclusive policies for folks that are transgender.
Yeah.
So all these different things that, the current administration is imposing as restrictions. So I think the lawsuit is saying like these things are unconstitutional.
One other thing that, since we're talking about litigation, there is a lawsuit, a judge on September 10th granted a temporary restraining order by the state of California and other similar states against HUD or actually it's more than HUD, it's this several departments regarding PWORA, the personal work opportunities and responsibilities. I can't remember the full thing.
Yeah, I know, it's hard to remember.
Yeah, the PWORA Act that says that if
a person is in crisis, it doesn't matter what their immigration status is, we can provide certain services like shelter and rapid rehousing and helping people get safe regardless of their immigration status. That was suspended. This restraining order said you have to stop that suspension and continue business as usual until this lawsuit is figured out. And so that's an update I wanted to share, especially for our ESG. I learned that this morning. Can we appoint an ad hoc then?
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to point out that there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 lawsuits right now.
Yes.
The likelihood of it getting settled soon is probably soon. Let's make a committee.
So this is an ad hoc committee on just
Continuum of care competition, the COC program, no fuss.
COC program.
No. Any volunteers? You cannot be on. You are conflicted. Okay, we got Sage,
I'd like to.
Judy. Others? We can have non-board members on it as well. So I can reach out to some of our like Fort Street Project and other providers, but this is to decide how we use the almost $2 million worth of rental assistance and other things like that. So it's important. Anyone else? Make eye contact. Okay. Thank you, let me know. So my other point was scoring tools or local competition processes may need to be updated on a tight timeline. So that's going to be some of the first work that we do within that ad hoc committee is decide, look at the performance of the current project, look at the goals that we have, and look at what our scoring tools are. But they may have to change based upon the NOFO, depending on what's in there.
And that hasn't come out.
No, okay. I have no idea when it's gonna come. Or even if it'll come. Thank you both. That's enough.
Right. Updates on ESG.
Sorry, I do. Sorry, is that okay?
Uh-huh.
ESG, so the 2024 ESG awards. Don't know if they actually officially announced them or not, because we got the award notice, RCS did. We got the award notice to the 2024 ESG application in like August, but it had this really interesting.
August, like a few months ago.
Yeah, but it had this very interesting, this is not for public, like it's very specific on.
Like it was embargoed, like you're not allowed to talk about
Yes,
it?
it was embargoed. So it might still be, and I'm breaking
No,
the
it's not.
rules.
No, at the last office hours,
Good, okay.
that was last Wednesday, they said that if you have received an award, you can share it now.
Oh, good.
But we have not publicly announced them, so we will not be telling anyone if you have an award.
I like not breaking.
It wants to be important.
So you got a secret award, but now you
So-
can be.
We got a secret award that I told Veronica about. It was like, help me interpret what I'm supposed to do with this information. And because it's like, never seen anything like that before. Anyway, so we did get, the way the application worked this time, it was a little bit different than previous years where they did the 2024 application and we'll get a new contract every year, but it has a renewal cycle for 3 years. So we just signed the current 25-26 contract. And then in 26, we'll sign the 26-27 contract, and then there'll be a 27-28 contract. So I imagine the next ESG RFP, NOFA, whatever, will come out in 2027 probably because they're doing this 3-year window. So It was 264,000 for the 25-26 year. And half of that is emergency shelter funds, 10% of it is to support data and HMIS entry, and then 40% of it is to support rapid rehousing. So
And that's
We
what you're
are-
expecting, Sage?
that's what we were expecting.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. It was very fun trying to figure out the budget with them because their instructions were very not clear, but luckily the state is willing to work with you when you don't do something right, especially when they don't tell you how to do it right.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of back and forth trying to figure out the details, but we're good to go, so we're doing a rapid rehousing. Oh,
All right. Our next meeting is Monday, October 2025, at 1:30 p.m. right here in the sun.